We have time for one more question before we take a quick break, and we'll start with Mr. LePage. If voters approve the Oxford County casino referendum proposal, would you favor amending that law to allow for table games at Hollywood Slots and or a tribal casino in eastern Maine?
That's a very good question, and I think that before you can answer that question, you've got to decide what Maine is going to be. And I do not favor tourism as the #1 industry in the state of Maine. I think that we could do better. We need to concentrate on paper, farms, and fishing. That's the backbone of the state of Maine. I personally have never voted in favor of a casino. If the state of Maine decides and its priority is that Maine has to become, its #1 industry will be tourism, then I don't see how you can have tourism in the state of Maine without casinos. Quite frankly, the only gambling I've ever done in my life is I get out of bed in the morning and I take my chances in the world. So gambling is not a big priority in my lifetime. But I don't see any problem with gambling because I do believe in a free market system.
Mr. Mills?
My answer is no.
Mr. Otten?
My answer is yes. Since I have another 50 seconds, I'll use them. 1 out of every $5 that moves through the state of Maine is tourism related. And 1 out of every 6 jobs in the state of Maine is related to the tourist industry. Now, the tourist industry encompasses everything from hunting and fishing to casino gambling. I believe that we need a good law for casinos, that if it's properly vetted, if it benefits the people of the state of Maine, then it should happen. But each casino has to be evaluated on its merits, at its location, and whether it is helpful to its community or whether it's a strain on the state of Maine. So each time we vote for a casino, you've got to look at the details because that's where the devil is lying. And there have been good proposals and bad proposals. The Oxford proposal seems to be a good one at this point.
Mr. Abbott?
My answer is yes as well. If the Oxford proposal passes, I think it's only fair that Bangor have the opportunity for expanded table gaming, and it's only fair that the Passamaquoddies have their opportunity as well.
Mr. Beardsley?
I would enforce the law, but I personally oppose all gambling.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for sticking to your times. We are going to take about a minute or two break right now and let you have a breather, take a drink, and we'll be back in just a minute or so.
You're watching the Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce Eaton Peabody gubernatorial primary debate for the Republican Party. Through advocacy, leadership, and education, the Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce promotes business, sustainability, and strives to enhance our rich quality of life. The Chamber represents 800 members in 21 communities. Check the website, bangorregion.com, for more information about Chamber membership and a list of upcoming seminars that are being held in conjunction with Eastern Maine Development Corporation. Thank you to Page Employment, Seaboard Security, and My Video Productions for producing this program. Now we continue with the debate.
Again, we appreciate all of the candidates here sticking to your time so that we can get in as many questions as possible this evening. So we'll get started again. We're going to begin now with some questions that have been submitted by Chamber members directly. This one is a little long-winded, so hold on for the question at the end. It comes from Eastern Maine Healthcare Systems. In 2009, the Baldacci administration satisfied part of several years of Maine care debt owed to Maine hospitals using federal stimulus funds. But he did not correct the structural problem in reimbursement. In other words, the debt is now climbing at a rate of about $250,000 a day statewide. It now exceeds $285 million for services provided over the past 3 years, and that debt continues to grow with no plan for paying it off. How do you propose to fix this problem going forward if you become governor? We'll begin with Mr. Mills.
I was part of the group that led the fight to get that payment made out of the stimulus funds because the Democrats were quite prepared to spend it on anything else but paying that debt off. This is one of the legacies of our current governor. one of the many debt legacies that he's going to leave the next governor to pay. There isn't any quick answer to that. The bill has to be paid. The Medicaid federal match is either 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, depending on whether you get the stimulus money or not, 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. And it should be paid just as soon as possible. We are converting, however, the hospital payment system to a real-time fee-for-service system so that the system eventually will come clean. I had something to do with that this past year. But he's right about the pile-up in obligations that have accrued since 2007.
Mr. Otten.
Well, frankly, we've been writing checks that we haven't been able to cash for over a decade, which is why we have the problem that we have. To get rid of the problem is going to take time. The first step, and I'll be honest with you, I don't understand how hospitals can be businesses and we can expect them to provide services where they give us services today and they get reimbursed 3 years from now at about 60% of what they spent taking care of us. The whole system is broken, and I think we have to re-examine it and do a top-down look at the system. But immediately, we have to start paying current. We have a debt of $285 million, but we can't add to that. We start by living within our means on an immediate basis and making sure that we start being current with our hospital systems currently, and that will alleviate the immediate problem. But the bigger problem is going to take more than the 60 seconds that we have to discuss it.
Mr. Abbott.
We need to work first with our congressional delegation to try to fix the unfair reimbursement rate that Maine has to deal with with our Medicare. And we're getting reimbursed about 84 cents on the dollar, which means people with insurance are paying sometimes up to 133 cents on the dollar for their care. The second thing we have to do, I think, is look at a structural change to the system. I think with our Maine care population, we'd be much better off if we could transition into a fee-per-patient system rather than a fee-per-service patient system. I think that would be better for the hospitals. You could get them the money up front. They wouldn't get as much money, but they'd get predictable cash flow, and I think we'd get better care for our patients. So I think those are two steps that we could make right off that would help.
Mr. Beardsley.
We should honor our obligations as a state. I think we have to start that way. I think we have to find as rapid a clear way to pay that off. The same thing's true with our 55% commitment to our schools. We absolutely, if we're going to make those kinds of commitments, we need to be trusted when we do that. I also think that we ought to be looking at standardizing reimbursements so that each institution gets the same level of reimbursement for the same service. And we have differential reimbursements as well as inadequate reimbursements, and it leads to, I guess, what you call social engineering, and is not being driven by cost factors.
Mr. Jacobson?
I think there's a broader problem here. 240-something thousand Mainers are on Maine care. 23% of our population. We are trapping these people in generational welfare. We are robbing them of their human dignity. We are stealing the futures from their children. And our problem is the money? Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, we ought to be so ashamed of ourselves that we are trapping generations and hundreds of thousands of Mainers in this system. We need to fix that problem, as well as pay off the hospitals. We ought to be outraged that we are housing these people in this system. It's not okay. It's not okay.
Mr. LePage?
I believe we need to fix our mandates so that we have more Mainers buying private insurance rather than being on Maine care. I do believe that we need to go, as we go forward, we need to be paid up current. The debt that is accrued for the last 3 years will take some time. And quite frankly, when I said earlier that I would not favor an arena, those are the type of things I believe we need to do first. We need to pay the existing debt that we have on the books before we start doing new things. We need to fix our basic infrastructure. And education is a major factor. You know, and interestingly enough, in education, for instance, in Waterville, we've lowered education costs by about $3 million the last 5 years, and we've given it back to the taxpayer, despite the fact the state is not reimbursing us at the levels they were several years ago.